So this morning we're going to run through our CAPPS software. It's our version 10. It's been out for several months, and it is more configurable than our previous version. So we'll run through that and feel free to ask questions as we go through. And if worst case, if we don't get through all of them during the session, we can follow up afterwards, but hopefully we can get through them during the session. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the CEO and founder of Primavera Associates. I'm going to present our solution this morning. So let's talk about our CAPPS tool. So one of the things that we find with updating in P6, it's one of the most challenging things that we face when we're doing scheduling. So I'm going to ask anyone who would like to, you're able to participate in the poll. So I want to understand how you do your updates. So what we find is we have a variety of answers to this. A lot of our clients either get XCR files, they might use Excel files, they might do meetings, run through the scope, get the updates in, or even a variety of emails. It totally depends on how your team is. I'll share the results for those who are able to answer. Really depends on how the project is structured and how your team is set up. So we saw in some of the responses, meetings, pretty common. So lots of different ways that you might do updating. Now, updating is a challenge because our projects more and more are more complex in the sense that we might be procuring all around the world. We might have different participants funding the project, so joint ventures, P3, public-private partnerships, so makes things more complicated, just more coordination. So the integrity of your schedule and the ability to do updating so that you can forecast becomes much more important and much more challenging. We also have lots of specialty contractors more and more with the more technology that we're installing. And as I mentioned, getting things from all around the world means that we have to really manage those schedules even more tightly. And what we find is we have larger scheduling teams, maybe more people collaborating on putting those schedules together that use different software, different systems, which of course just makes it more and more challenging to get the updates in, to understand the interdependencies, and make sure the updates are timely. Without timely updates, you can't really forecast as well as you need to, and that's very important. Now, more and more what we're finding is with the technology that we have available to us, we can get updates more quickly, smaller updates in at one time. You know, not that long ago, we would really do updates once a month, maybe on a large capital project. And if you're doing any costing and resourcing, your data could be easily 2 weeks old from the update cycle. So you could be working with 6 weeks old data quite easily. So that's becoming better just with the technology we have. We've got more streamlining taking place. But we still have the challenge of understanding those impacts and really understanding what is happening to our schedule. So I'm going to ask another quick question. How often do you do your updates? Now, this, of course, will depend very, very much on the kind of project that you're doing. So if you're doing turnarounds, large turnarounds or shutdowns, very often you're going to be doing those daily. If you're doing capital projects, you might be talking about, oops, I think I actually put the wrong question. I picked the question of how long does it take you to do updates? So I think that also depends on the kind of projects that you're doing. So if you're doing capital projects, it's often that you might take over a week to get your updates in. If you're doing turnaround projects, you know, you've got to get those updated every single day usually. And those could be a few hours, which in a turnaround, that's quite a bit of effort. And of course, you might be taking a day, 2 days, depending on your project, especially those sort of mid-range uh, upgrade type projects or um, smaller capital projects. So it really depends on the kind of project. So let me ask the question I meant to ask. How, um, I think we have two of the same question. That's part of the problem. Okay, not a problem. I wanted to ask how often you do updates. So that really does depend on the kind of work that you're doing. And we're really looking at trying to get the updates done much more quickly, much more often, so we can forecast any impacts and do that schedule analysis, which of course is the whole point of putting a schedule together, is to update often, forecast impacts, and stay in front of any problems that are coming up. So let's touch on how does CAPPS work. So CAPPS is a web app. So it can be deployed on-premise within your organization through a web browser. You can have a hybrid deployment, so you can put it in our cloud and have it tied to your internal system. Or if you're working P6 in a cloud or a hosted environment, CAPPS can be installed with it in the cloud, or again, from a different third-party location like we provide. So in terms of deployment, very easy, very flexible. So I mentioned it's a web-based tool. I'll show it to you in a minute. It's a tabular format, so very easy, lightweight, easy for people to use. It's secured through P6, so we do use P6 web service, which allows us to administer and manage the security through P6. And it allows the person who's using CAPPS for their updating to self-serve. Okay, and I'm going to show you some very easy techniques. So we wanted to make CAPPS a very lightweight approach. So it's not hard to learn. It's very easy to roll out. And you can use approvals or not within the CAPPS tool. So we have that available. Or if you prefer just to allow the P6 team to review and approve, you can do it that way too. So we wanted to keep it very lightweight. We didn't want it to be a very hard, heavy lift. And we wanted to make sure that you could take advantage of the things that you already do in P6 with coding, with layouts, with rescheduling, reviewing things in P6 with your reports that you use already in P6. We also have the ability to tag deviations or a change request so that you can get the ball rolling right from the person doing the work in CAPPS to the scheduling team to start the project management efforts on any change orders that you might need to start to explore. Okay, so I'm going to jump in a minute to take a look at CAPPS. So the way that we've put the infrastructure in place of CAPPS with P6 is very much on our coding, responsibilities, things that you probably use already, like vendor codes, crew codes, discipline codes. We use those to allow you to filter to the person that you're giving to do the updates in CAPPS. They can do the updates, you can review them or approve them in the tool or within P6. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're really looking at layouts to give you the data. You can look at them, you can update, you can approve them, and when you're happy with the data that you've received, the updates you've received, you run the utility, our P6 calculator infrastructure, which sets all the values in P6, and off you go. Okay, so let me go ahead and actually show you the software and run through the way that you can set up CAPPS. I'm switching to a different screen. Let me know if you can't see it, Chen, or if it's too small on for the way it's coming through.
It looks good.
It's all right? Okay, good. Okay, so let me run through CAPPS. So this is CAPPS. I've logged in. The login, as I mentioned, is administered through P6, so it allows your P6 team to just do what they're already doing to take care of the CAPPS tool as well. So let me kind of show you the lay of the land of what we're seeing in CAPPS, sorry. So we have different tabs here. So I can update all the different things that I normally update in P6. Activities, resources, expenses, steps. Then I have a few view-only uh, components, predecessors, successors. So if your team wants to understand the impacts, they can look at these as well. There's no updating allowed currently in those two tabs. And then we have the final tab, which is essentially the reviewers tab, the approvers, the reviewers. It's also the location that I can put in some notes, and I can see sort of where I'm trending on various data elements. So the start, the finish, the duration, resources, and expenses. This gives me an idea of the variances. Now, you might say, well, I don't my team doesn't use all of these components of P6, and that's fine. You don't have to use all of them. We have the configuration tab, which is essentially where we could create layouts similar to P6. And I don't have to have a layout that has all the tabs. I can have a layout that's just the tabs that I need to deploy for that user. So let's say my PM is only going to update tasks. I can give them just the task screen, and I can also control the fields that they're having access to. Okay. So the idea was to make this easy to deploy, easy to update. Now, before I jump into doing the updates, let's go back to P6 and let me go to show you kind of what the result is going to be for the person in P6, the scheduler, who's going to receive the data. Okay, so we basically have a reviewer, approver, layout that we create that includes the pieces that we're using of CAPPS. So for example, if I'm using percent complete from CAPPS, if I'm using some notes from the submitter, I can see all that. I create the layout with that. I'll scroll over a little bit to show you a few more things that we're using in this example. So we're going to have the CAPPS start date that they're putting in. We've got that flagging to let the P6 person receiving the data know, whoops, okay, this is later than the planned date. Okay, so we've got those variances available for the person in P6. And then I can see other things that I'm using. So if I'm using resources, if I'm using expenses, I can see those as well. Okay. And when I actually accept and run in the data, this is some messaging. So I'll come back to that after we do some updates. Okay, so that's kind of the result that we're going to get when a submission is created. Well, let me go back a step and let me show you how you get ready to start using CAPPS. Okay, so the setup. So what I've done is I've opened more than one project. Okay, so that's an important piece. CAPPS allows you to deploy more than one project as a CAPPS project, and the person doing the updates, like a project manager, may be in charge of many projects. Okay? So I have an example just with 4 projects. It can be as many as you wish. There's not a limit. And depending on how you do your updating, how you're deploying your updates, you can do it at the whole project level. So let's say you have a project manager who's going to do all the updating of these 4 projects. I can deploy it with a simple code at the project level. But if my updates are going to be divvied up perhaps by the, the phase of the project, so I might have an engineering lead doing the updates versus a construction manager, then this approach may not be good enough. That's where we can take advantage of activity codes. And activity codes can allow us to go beyond just one. These are the project codes that I was using. So just one person doing the updating for a whole project. So in this case, let me just give a bit more room here. We can get into a little bit more of a granular approach to the updates, to the submitter, to the approver. Okay, so you can mix and match as appropriate. So in this example, the project manager is doing some of the milestone updates, the project controls updates, and maybe some of the upfront components. And then I have my engineering lead who's doing some of them and some of the supervisors at the job site. Right? Now, I can go deeper. I don't have to just use one code. I can have multi-layer coding to allow me to filter and divvy up who's going to do the updating. So I can go into more detail. So for example, I might decide to give my vendor access to CAPPS. So they can do their updates in CAPPS, very lightweight. They don't need to be a P6 expert to do them. And they can have a reviewer, an approver, or I can send them straight in to into P6. And I can get even deeper into the way I divvy it up. I could have not only my vendor, but also the crew lead. Okay. So very much up to you how you want to deploy it. Completely configurable in terms of the layer of detail and who you give which activities to for the updating. So very simple in terms of the setup. And then we take advantage of that coding to give to the different users the login and which set of activities they're going to have access to. Okay, so from that setup, I'm going to go back to my reviewer approver layout so that we can do some updates and we can see them coming in to P6 and we can walk through how you receive the data, how you analyze it, how you can give feedback, and how you can essentially get your updating going much more quickly, very simply, without a lot of training and without having to deal with XCRs, Excel files, emails, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to go back to CAPPS, and we're going to run through some simple updates and then some more complicated updates. So let's start with just a few activity updates. So let me explain kind of what you're looking at on the screen. So we have some activities that we've got, and they're the ones that I have access to. And you can see here that I've got a little filtering funnel icon, letting me know that I've got a filter on this layout. So this layout is not only my activities, but it's my activities for that one vendor, that engineering X vendor. So this would work really well. Let's say they're doing the updates and providing them to me, or perhaps I want to do the updates in a meeting, an online meeting. And so I just get a filter ready and we can run through their activities. Now I can see that this vendor engineering X has a lot of critical activities. So we're showing you essentially the float. The near critical activities will have this orangey yellow, and the ones that have more float are not flagged at all. Okay, now that's configurable. And I think in this example, we have like a 2-day, so it's 16 hours of float as our criteria, but it's configurable. You can set that in your app. Now you can also see that some of these activities have what we call this business process state. So this is for the CAPPS submission. So this lets me know that some of these have been submitted and approved previously in previous updates. And some of them were submitted but were not approved. So this was a rejection. Okay. So if we're rejecting, there's usually a note available as well that we could look at and understand what the concern was. Okay. So we'll look at that further. So this is to let you know what's happened with that activity in the CAPPS submissions and reviews and approvals. Okay. So let's actually look at what we can update. So we have a variety of things we can update. So this is the activity code, that crew code. Now we can make an activity code uneditable, as you can see here, and we can make it editable as well. So we have both options in the tool. So although we thought crew one was going to do the work, it may actually be a different crew that is actually going to take on this work. So we're able to modify the code in CAPPS. Now, of course, we want to do some updating as well. Okay, now, I'll go ahead and start some of these activities just so you can see how this works. So I can start the activity. Now, this is weighed in November. So we're going to go ahead and pull this back into our window of work. So we can say we got it started this week, which of course is way in advance. It's months in advance. And we can tell the computer what the remaining duration is. Okay, so this was a 20-day activity. We've got it converting into hours, which is how P6 stores the data. I can type in how many days are left just by typing 30D. Okay. So in this case, although we started earlier, we're saying that it's going to take longer to achieve this scope of work, and we're putting that in. Now, depending on your duration type, you may or may not be able to update the percent complete, so it depends on the duration type. Now, I can put in a note, and we have two layers of notes here. We have a notebook, or we have a short note, which is a UDF. So we have both available to you. And they're both accessed through the same little pick area, okay? So we started early, but it is going to take longer to get the task completed. And so you can go ahead and put the note in there. I'll go ahead and just put the note in both places just so you can see how this works. You can put in the date that you did the update. This is just sort of best practice of how I usually use notebooks so that we've got a good running track of the notes that we're putting in. Okay. So I've started it. I've changed my remaining duration. I've put a note in. I have other fields that I can look at on the screen. Okay, so I've got float, and as we mentioned, this one's critical. And you can control what you're seeing on the screen. Okay, so there's one very simple update on one activity. I can go ahead and put some updates in on these activities in progress as well. So you can see I've got a percent complete calculated here. I've got a duration. I've got a start date already. So I can complete some activities, and I can put in a date that it's finished. Now I might say that this is going to finish next week, and maybe we're not going to get an update done with the team, so I can go ahead and put the finish in. So we'll do those two for the time being. Okay. So once I'm finished, I can go ahead and save the progress. And that's what you want to see. The progress was sent. Now it's sent to two places. It's sent to the approver in CAPPS, and it's also sent into P6. Okay, so I can refresh that. And I can see some were already approved, and you can see some or just submitted. So those two submitteds are sitting there for me to take a look at and to review. Okay, so the person in P6 always has the ability to look at the submissions. That's the way we designed it intentionally, so that if there is an approver in the middle that you want to take a look at them, they're not going to hold up the updates. Okay, that was designed intentionally so that the P6 people are always in control of what's happening with the updates. So let's run through what we just received. So we just got in some updates on these two activities that I just did. Okay, so let's take a look at what happened. So we know when the updates have come in. So we've got a track on that. So it's last update. We can see who submitted them. So that's the user that was logged in, which was me. And then we can take a look at what I've updated. Okay. So, oh shoot, this something's always very strange in this layout. Let me get that. It sort of clears my activities for some reason. So here's the note that I put in. So you can see the note is the short note goes to user defined field. The long note goes to the notebook. So you've got both available to you. Okay. And if we have additional notes, you'll see the total running information in there. So that's the activity that I started. And let's go see what I actually updated. So let's just scroll over and we'll take a look at whether there was an approver. So of course there wasn't. At this point, we didn't approve in CAPPS, so it was just a submission. And if you're not going to use approvers in CAPPS, you just don't put these in your layout. You can just hide those fields altogether. Now let's take a look at what we know about the data that I've just put in. So I put in a start date, which of course is quite a bit sooner than we planned start. So it's letting me know that I'm well ahead. So we've got the little flag. It's a blue star because it's way ahead. And you can see a rough calculation on the variance. Okay. So you've got that information. So that's good. That sounds like a good thing. And I gave a remaining duration in there. And of course, that is trending longer, just as I put in the notes. So we're going to take longer on that activity. So I can see that. And if I'm all okay with that, I'm comfortable with that, I can leave that. And I have additional fields I could have updated. I didn't in this example. So I'll show you that we've got the ability to update the suspend and resume if you use that, expected finish, and of course, resources and expenses, which I didn't do in this example. So that's one of the updates. The second update was, oops, it does this clearly. I'll just make sure it's not clear. So I'll just walk through it rather than highlighting it. Okay, so this is letting me know that this activity had been 66% complete. And again, it's letting me know who did the update on it. I'll scroll over a little bit more here. The start date was unchanged. And now we have a finish date that we're trying to apply to this. Okay, so we're finishing and it's earlier. And it's again letting me know whether I've got some variances. So I can see in this case it's earlier, so that's good. And I can accept or reject that update. Okay. Now, in that particular update, it's just something weird with this layout. Let me show you the 4 statuses that we have in our updated. Okay. So this is letting me know it's been submitted. So we control that on the submit. Now, as a person looking at it in P6, I could say it's under review, meaning I'm not totally happy with it. I'm still looking at it. I can approve it. I can reject it. Okay, so I can do any of those items inside of P6 directly if I wish. Okay, so I don't need an approval in CAPPS. It's an option. It's not mandatory whatsoever. Now, in this case, I started early and I know that started, so I'm happy with it. So if I'm good with these two, I don't have to manually approve and so on. I can just go ahead and accept these changes. And the way that I do that is through the approval straight away in approving everything that was submitted into that project. Okay, so I have more than one way to do this. Now, these two submissions were in this CAPPS version 10 number 3 project. So I can go ahead and just accept those changes for that one project, or if I receive many projects submitted at once, okay? So it all depends on how you've got your schedule set up. I can go ahead and accept those changes in one or many of the projects. So I'll just do this one project in this case, because that's what I received in. So I say that I'm going to accept with the go button, and that will run the changes through. And if all was submitted correctly, it should go to the pass system. Now, some of our clients run the approvals automatically. Okay? And that's also an option. It's a configuration. So you either allow the P6 scheduler to review and set the approval, or you can let it go in automatically. Okay, so very much configurable depending on your particular situation. So that's going to take a minute. It's going to take all the CAPPS submitted data and put it into the P6, real P6 fields. So the start date will move to the actual start date, the finish date to the actual finish, percent completes will move, remaining durations will move, and so on. Okay, so I'm just trying to refresh it so that you can see the submission. And what we're waiting for is this pass. Now, one thing that might come through as a fail, because we have a security on being able to reopen activities. Okay, so now it's finished doing its work. Let me show you, just refresh this and you'll see what's taking place. So what we're going to see is we're going to see that the data is going to move into the real P6 field. So let me just refresh this and then I'll scroll over. Okay. So those two activities, they're approved automatically because of accepting all the changes. And if I scroll over, sorry, there we go. This is one of them and this is one of them. So if I scroll over, what we'll see is the dates that I put in to the updates have been accepted and the finish dates have been accepted. And you'll see the variances are cleared for the next update. Okay, so they clear them out for the next update, and then you can just use the variance fields right inside of P6 that can compare your actual to your baseline. Okay, so then it's cleared out and it's ready for the next round of updates in CAPPS. Okay, so let me go back to CAPPS and let me go back in and do another round of updating. So some of you might do more complicated updating. You might actually want to use resources. You might want to use steps and expenses. Okay, so it's very much up to you. You can mix and match. You can have some projects where you've got resources and others that you don't. And you just create a layout to accommodate that. So let's get into something a little bit more complicated with resources, steps, and so on. Okay. So based on my layout, I've told it I just want to use certain tabs. Some I'm not going to have turned on. And then you can see it just changes what I have available. Okay, so this helps you set up the layouts for different people who will be doing updating. Okay, so you can see that I have some activities that I had been updating, more or less the same ones. And again, you can see that one that was rejected that I still haven't addressed. I can address it at any time. So let's take a look at doing some more updating, and let's do some updating related to resources, expenses, and steps as well. So you'll see that my resource tab, I've got more activities, and that we've done that intentionally because the person doing the resource updating may not just be doing updating for one vendor, okay, depending on how you do that updating. So we've made them independent in terms of how they work. Now, I can navigate to this exact activity if I wish from this screen to the next. That's what these little icons help me do. So if I want to update this specific activity, I can use the little icon that takes me to the resources. And then I'm on that activity. And these are the two resources that are going to do the engineering work. Now, if that activity wasn't started, as in this example down here, so this C2EXT100, this activity is not started. That's what that little green icon is trying to show you. Okay, so this one's in progress. This one hasn't started. So I can actually start an activity straight from this window as well. Okay, so I can start it. I'm going to pull that ahead to me. And I'll say that I got it started yesterday. Okay, so I can start directly in any of these windows as well. And then I can update my actual units, my estimate to complete units, and percent completes are going to be calculated. Let me explain that. So let's go ahead and stick with this first one, and I'll use this second one that I just opened up as well. So I have 450 planned hours for the civil engineering lead. I have 600 planned hours for the drafting. Now, because this activity is started, I can go ahead and do some updates on the hours. So the update can be going over, going under, and the estimate to complete will try to help recalculate on screen to give you some feedback. So let's go ahead and say that we've used up 300 hours as well on the engineering lead, and the estimate to complete could be going over or under. Okay. So in this example, let's say that we're going to run over. Okay. So this is just giving us a rough calculation on screen to help us know where we're at with the percent complete. On the drafting, I had already done an update, 300 hours with estimate to complete at 100. So in this case, we're going to do better on that. I can go ahead and do another update on it. Okay. So I can say that we've actually used the 600 hours, and then I can forecast how many are left. So I could be going over. In this case, we're trending in a bad direction. We're going over. Okay. Again, this is just giving us a rough calculation from the estimate at completion, which is the total, versus the actual units. So this is a calculation on screen, just to help give you an idea where you're at. Now, on this particular one, I started the activity, and I can go ahead and do some updating as well. So the same sort of approach can be taken. And in this case, I can say that I'm going to trend better. Okay. So I can go ahead and put some hours in, and you'll see the result of those. Okay. So this is updating the resources. It's very simple to use. Again, we have filtering capability on this window by the coding or a variety of other different things you might want to do. Okay. So I can even filter just on certain resources. Let's say I'm responsible for certain resources. I can filter on those as well. Okay, so very easy to use to get those updates in. Now, I might want to do the expense updating as well. So again, I can use the little icon to navigate to, oops, I clicked the wrong one. I went to steps. I can go back. I can also go to expenses. Okay. So you can use those to navigate, or you can go right to the tab, whichever way is easiest for you. And again, depending on who does the updates, that could be valuable to navigate between the two or not. So in terms of expenses, we've got a very simple user interface. We've got two activities with expenses for the engineering X vendor. And I can go ahead and do those updates. So I've already done some updating previously, and I can do some more updating. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to go over on this one. And let's go ahead and say we're going to go under on this one. Oops. And let's just say I have 10,000 left, just to make it simple. Okay. So again, this is calculating on screen what's going on with the expenses. Let's do one more. Let's do some step updating. So I'm going to use this same activity, this engineering mining number 10. So I can use the navigation to the steps, and here are the steps. So we have some clients who got the software just so they could update the steps for their engineering and their fabrication and delivery offsite, because that stuff generally is hard to get a good understanding of the physical percent complete that we're at. So in this case, we can go ahead and do the updating on the steps. So I can say that some of the steps were started and finished, or some of them were just partway through. And I can go ahead and put some notes on those steps. Okay, so the approvals are going to take longer. And these are going to go into the steps area in the notes in the step area. Okay. So I can also update those that had been partially put in place. And again, very simple to do this updating. Now, some of you may have wanted to use steps, but you never had an easy way to deploy those for your engineering leads, your offsite procurement folks to do the updating. So this is something that could be very, very valuable, because you can use this to help define the physical percent complete on an activity, which could start to help your team move into true earned value analysis inside of P6. Okay, so I did some simple updates, and again, you can see how you can use this. I can start an activity, again, right in the step window if I wish. And again, I'll put that into May time frame. And you can start that in that window very easily. And again, do some updating in that window. Now, all of this data is being also saved into this sort of reviewer approval sort of window. Now, this window, again, as I mentioned earlier, is trying to give you a bit of an idea of what's going on with variances. So these are on-screen calculations. They're rough estimates of variances. They may vary to what you get in P6, which will be once you've submitted, you may get slightly different variances, but these are in the right ballpark. Now, this is important for the submitter to be able to look at, and of course, the reviewer and approver to look at. Now, I mentioned that we also have the ability to let the user start to define that we have a deviation request, like a change order request. And this is a code that we can define. So this is configurable to what coding categorization you want to use within your organization. So if I do have a change that I think we need to go after, we can start to identify that here. So let me just make that a little bit bigger, just my monitor. It's quite small, just so you can see how this can work similar to a tablet kind of resolution. So we're saying we do need to explore deviation requests. We think it's because of materials, design, access issues, and again, you can identify these as appropriate for your organization. And then if there's a specific number, deviation number, change order number, you can hook it up to that. Okay, so you can start to create new ones and or hook to ones that already exist. So those are the final outputs. And this is also where the approver or reviewer notes would also be available to the submitter to look at in more detail. Okay. So those are available in here. So why don't I go ahead and save the progress? I'm going to log out and I'm going to log in as a approver just so you get an idea of what that could look like if you want to use approvers. And looks like I have a problem here. Okay, yeah, looks like I have a problem. Okay, well, we'll skip that part for today. I think it seems like the filter looks like it should have been changed, so not an issue. I'll just stick with the approver in P6. So it's been submitted, and I've been sitting in P6, so I'm going to go ahead and just refresh that. I'm just going to pull this down because I did update a few more activities. So we should see more activities come into the layout. And that's what we see here. So these are the ones that were submitted on this last round. And I can go ahead and look at them similarly to how I did before. Okay. So there's that deviation request for materials that I can look at, and I can start to see that there is maybe a change needed. Let's go ahead and look at the resources and expenses on some of these as well. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it does that on this layout. I'll just go ahead and refresh that. Okay, so let's start with this number 10. I definitely did some updating there. Now I can look at it on the upper part of the layout. I can also look at it in the more detailed components of the layout. So I've got both available. Let's start in the lower area, the detailed area. So I can see that I had a budgeted units of 600 and 450. I've got some updates that were submitted. Now they haven't been approved yet, so you can see they're not in the real P6 fields yet. So we hold them until we've had a chance to review them and say we're okay with them. Okay, so this is a good way to look at the layout. This is what they sent me. This is what I have currently. This is what they sent me. That's what I have currently. Okay. So I can see the rough calculation of the percent completes that CAPPS has done. Again, it's not in the real P6 field yet until I approve it. Okay. So we've got the cost calculations and we've got the information about who submitted it, all there. Now I can do a layout in the resource assignments area as well, you know, especially if you do a lot of resource updating, that would be a good way to look at it as well. Okay. So we can have a layout for the resource assignments and you can look at it through there as well. So the idea was to use as much as the pre-existing functions that you use in P6, not to make you have a bunch of extra items that you need to stick handle. Okay, so these are the updates that I received. So this is just a different format in this last update cycle right here, and I can see them right here on the screen. Okay. So very easy to use, very lightweight, taking advantage of the things you're used to using already in P6. So the steps go into the step window. So I can see same sort of approach. So we hold what was submitted, so you can see what's going to change. So this is going to go from 0 to 20%. That's going to go from 20 to 100%. And any notes would be inside of there as well. And expense is the same approach. So we can see the submission on the expenses that we're getting. We can see percent completes being calculated. So we're going to go from 60 to 80 in this one, and who was the submitter. It's very easy to take a look at the data. And if I scroll over, this is also a very handy way to look at the data. So we can see whether we're going over on some, whether we're going under on some in terms of the labor components, same for the expenses. So again, same sort of approach. If I'm happy with these submissions, I can approve them, have them run in. If there's something I'm not happy with, I can tell them that I'm reviewing this. Okay. If there's something that I don't agree with whatsoever, I can tell them I'm going to reject it. Okay. So both of those will go back to the person working in CAPPS so they can see it. Now, normally I would put a note in there and why I'm rejecting it, so you can put that in. You can see it, and it would go into their working screen, and they would see that, and it will hold those from being sent in to the P6 fields. Okay, so that's what a review would look like. So the feedback loop is here. It's a little yield sign so that you know something's been is being reviewed. They're not happy with something. And as I showed you earlier, a rejection would look like this. Okay. So then everything else that was submitted, I could accept just the way I did earlier. So I would run it in with the go button. I would save that, and then it's going to run in all of the other submissions, and it'll hold back the ones that I put into reject or review. It holds those two back. Okay. Everything else that was submitted would be accepted, and again, the variance fields would be cleared for the next run, and the P6 fields will be updated. Okay. And then in P6, you would do your normal variance reporting, your gap analysis on submissions and so on. So that is our focus, is to allow the P6 team to get the approvals in, the submissions in very easily, get the reviews and approves in very easily, and get a very lightweight feedback loop for the user. Now, I did mention this is very configurable. You have a very lightweight configuration where you can make, you can tell the layout which fields you would like to display to the updater. Okay, now these are configurable, so we don't have to only use these. If you have codes, as I mentioned, crews, vendors, where's the vendor? I can't see it. It's here somewhere. Crew, vendor, so you can have those on the screen. If there's fields you don't want the team to use, maybe you don't use suspend and resume, you can just turn those off. If you're not using any labor, you can turn those off. So very easy to configure this. And once you've set it up, again, you just save the layout, and off you go. It's a very lightweight, and that was intentional. You can rearrange these columns very easily on the screen. So again, very easy for someone to set up. Once I've done that again, you just save that layout, and all changes across all these tabs get saved. Okay, so I think I've given you a feel for most of the features. Just the one approval there was, I think, a layout filter was changed. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how you could deploy something quite easily to your team to allow them to do the updates without losing control of approving them in P6. Okay. Maybe one last little thing I should have shown you was how easy it is to do a look ahead filter inside the system. So, a minute ago, my vendor X, I just had just a very small handful of activities. I probably had a look ahead filter as well. So it's very easy to do a look ahead is before, and I can say, I'm going to look at everything in the next month. And very simple to do a nice, simple little look ahead filter on the screen. Okay. All right. So hopefully you got some ideas of how the tool works. I'm going to go back and do a wrap up, touch on a few of our case studies, and give you some more food for thought on how some of our clients are using the tool. Absolutely, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the question area. I will try and address them. It's pretty common we don't get that many questions on CAPPS because I think it's generally quite an easy software to understand. Now, let me touch on some of our clients who are using CAPPS in some form. Our very first client, who was really our launch client many years ago, was Petro-Canada. Now, of course, they're Suncor now. At the time, they were they needed, what they were looking for was the ability to allow their site team at some of their big refineries the ability to do their updates. Now, what they were finding was they had so many projects on the go. They had small maintenance projects, they had large, huge brownfield capital projects, extensions to the plant, very large ones on the go. They had turnarounds twice a year in some cases. So the scheduling team was spread very, very thin. They wanted their PMs and engineering team to be able to help get the updates in. And their requirement at the time was to do updates every 2 weeks at minimum on the dates and once a month at minimum on the costs. So what they did was they rolled out CAPPS to their PMs and engineering leads, and the benefit was immediately recognizable. So they were able to do their updates every week, not every 2 weeks. So every week was achieved. Also, the key thing that they found was they were able to see the issues much quicker. And what they mean by 50% was they could see them much sooner and address them much quicker. And the offsite tracking for deliveries of major equipment was much more visible. So the improvement was seen very quickly, very immediate. So another one that is very interesting. It's a very different kind of situation. It's a large governmental program to retrofit and refurbish their buildings to become more environmentally friendly across the country. So they have over 150 PMs actually using CAPPS, doing their updates from all over the country, and they do them every week. Their mandate was to do them every 2 weeks and also do the costs once a month. So they're actually achieving every week also. And they only had 4 schedulers prior to this trying to do all the updates, and they were not getting them done. And it was causing difficulty on reporting for the program to the client, which was a governmental agency. So the key thing that CAPPS has achieved is they're able to get the updates done. Costs were not, you used to take them 2 weeks to get the costs in. So now they're able to get that monthly reporting, and the response time has been improved tremendously. Now, I mentioned this example a little earlier, and this was Vico Canada. It's now CH2M. They were one of our key clients that wanted steps because what they were finding is the reporting on the engineering progress was very difficult to get consistent. So each engineering group were taking a bit of a wild ass guess on what percent complete they were because they didn't have a strong methodology at the time on how to understand the physical percent achieved on the engineering packages. So we deployed steps with the physical percent complete. So we had a much better idea, which allowed a more consistent forecasting on remaining work. They were also able to start tracking engineering effort as well. So this made it much stronger on identifying the actual forecasting on these packages. And in terms of the delivery, it improved the delivery of the packages because their prioritization got much better. Okay. So those are some examples, real world examples of return on investment that we've seen. So some feedback that we've received from clients is just how easy the software is to deploy, how easy it is to use. And now the team is able to get updates done much quicker. Okay. Even updating in meetings. We've seen some of our clients use it in meetings, and it's very easy to get those updates, get the notes in so we understand why we updated, how we were, how we did. It's easier even than using the P6 interface. So some of our clients are using it in that manner as well. I touched on the engineering aspects. The issue management is another key thing that we found is the impact analysis and avoiding issues, being able to log the issue right at the time, and that documentation that is quite easy to do now in CAPPS has also been a big benefit. So those are some other feedback components we've got. These are a bit of overlap there. Okay, so I think I've shown you the main things I wanted to convey on CAPPS. Of course, we did create CAPPS. It's over 10 years ago that we started with CAPPS. And as you see, most of our software is client driven. So we don't just make it out of fun. It's clients requiring things, and we built them up. And updating really gets much easier with some of the solutions that we've got. So this was one of them. Some of you may not be aware, we've got a barcode updating one, which works fantastic in turnarounds. And next month is going to be our TAPS, barcode updating month. So this is our CAPS month. So anyone who's interested, who thinks that there's good potential for CAPS on for their projects, definitely reach out to us. And we do have a special on right now, so feel free to reach out and explore that more. We also have P6 Loader, which is Excel-based updating, so that works for some. And of course, we have a team member available from Oracle. Okay, so updating is hugely important. It's usually the thing that becomes very problematic, and we've got a lot of options. So if you are struggling with updating, or you're not taking advantage of some of the P6 pieces you would like to because you thought updating it would be too difficult, you should explore it, okay? And that's very interesting. People are able to do the steps, as I mentioned, the resources and expenses, much easier now. So I want to thank you for joining. If you do have questions, throw them in the room, and I'll do them before we close out. But just some of the background on Emerald. We've been working with Primavera for more than 30 years, but we've been a partner for 27 years. And our focus has always been on the technology. We've had programmers on our team from the very beginning. And our tools are just sort of the culmination of so many years of dealing with integrations, automations, and tools just were the natural progression. And we've got many to make using all the Primavera tools easier. So this is P6, of course, but we've got unifier tools. We're bringing online AConnect tools. So if you're interested in some of those, reach out and we touch on them more. Of course, we do implementation and training, and we offer cloud environments. So we've got a lot of hosted clients, particularly those that are using our tools. So hopefully you saw something of interest. and learned how you could take better advantage of Primavera's tools. If you do want to learn more, definitely reach out to me. Shannon, if you want to throw my email in there, that would be great. And explore more about how you can make using Primavera better so that you can deliver better projects for your clients. Okay, I'll stay on. So if there are any questions, go ahead. If not, thanks so much for joining. And reach out if you have anything further after the webinar. Thank you.